The British surrender at Yorktown is often considered the end of the Revolutionary War, yet the conflict continued on the western Pennsylvania frontier. The attack on Hannistown is part of this story. The Revolutionary War erupted long-standing tensions between Native Americans and European settlers on the western Pennsylvania frontier. Shifting borders, betrayed treaties, raids on American settlements, and massacres at Native American villages made the war in the West distinct from the eastern seaboard. The Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy strived to maintain autonomy and claimed to land in the West. Some tribes sided with the British in hopes of curbing American expansion. The European settlers of Westmoreland County declared frustration with British leadership in the 1775 Hannistown Resolves. They formed a county militia and constructed stockade forts for defense in the event of an attack. Attacks on the frontier were brutal and bloody. In 1778, Native Americans and their British allies engaged in a series of raids on frontier settlements and forts. In retaliation, the Sullivan and Brodhead campaigns of 1779 used a scorched earth approach to destroy Native American villages. On October 19, 1781, British General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, Virginia, yet the war was not over in the West. Raids and massacres continued throughout 1782. In March, Pennsylvania militia killed nearly 100 men, women, and children at the Moravian Lenape village of Gannatahootun in modern-day Ohio. The Sandusky retaliated by crushing another attack led by Colonel William Crawford, who was tortured and killed. On May 31, 1782, a group of Native Americans and their British allies left Fort Niagara to launch an assault on western Pennsylvania. The plan was to plunge the frontier into chaos before soldiers returned from war and drive settlers east over the Allegheny Mountains. On July 13, 1782, court was in session at Hannistown, the seat of government for Westmoreland County. Those who weren't in court, conducting business, or spectating that day were in the fields tending to the crops. At approximately 2 p.m., the farmers noticed a group of Seneca and their British allies approaching. The people of Hannistown barely had time to gather their families, weapons, and belongings before they fled to the fort. Chaos ensued as buildings went up in flames. Some townspeople rode on horseback to warn nearby farmsteads. Court officials released prisoners from the jail and took the court records into the fort for safety. A few people died, including a young girl named Peggy Shaw, who was shot while rescuing a small child at the fort gate. Because the fort was spared, most people in Hannistown survived. They emerged to find most of the buildings burned, and fields and livestock also lost. The town's infrastructure had been destroyed. Such wanton destruction I have never beheld, burning and destroying as they went. The people of this place behaved bravely, retired to the fort, left all their prey to the enemy, and with 20 men only, and 9 guns in good order, we stood the attack till dark. Michael Hufnagel to General William Irvine at Fort Pitt. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Hanna and her daughter Jane were attending a wedding just over the hill. The raiders disrupted the wedding, but this time took prisoners. Elizabeth and Jane were among those held at Fort Niagara until the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, officially ending the Revolutionary War. When Elizabeth and Jane returned to Hannistown, it was described as a miserable place. Despite the success of the attack on Hannistown, Native Americans lost the key Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794 and also claimed to their homelands in the Northwest Territory. Hannistown never recovered, and the Westmoreland County seat moved to Greensburg in 1786. The Hannistown property was acquired by the Steele family and farmed from the 1830s to 1960s. In 1969, Westmoreland County acquired the land as a county park in partnership with the Westmoreland Historical Society. Hannistown did not survive the 1782 attack, but the story lived on. Efforts to conduct archaeological research, reconstruct historic buildings, and interpret the site through tours, programs, and exhibits continue today. Discover more about this history at Historic Hannistown.